Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's reading of Hope. If any of you caught that false start, sorry about that. Just a little glitch. But here we go. So today I'm going to be reading 2 chapters, and I think that'll take us maybe about 25 minutes. One of the chapters is very short. If for any reason we do go a little over, I will just once again beg forgiveness. But I think that should be somewhere between 20, between 20 and 30 minutes as usual. So, Chapter 9, The Storm begins. Ever since the Great Peace, Laconia had been a kingdom with 2 capitals. Only one political capital, but of course, Laconians spoke of the old capital and the new capital. The Hurin emperor at the time of the war was Diaphon the Conqueror. He had struck a peace deal with the then Laconian king Philon III. For the first time in history, a Hurin conquest ended in a peace pact rather than a military victory. Still, it was considered a Hurin victory, and Diaphon continued to be called the Conqueror. The terms of the pact were thus: Philon would keep his palace in Grenvir, the ancient capital of Laconia, and while he would not be a king, he would become first lord of the kingdom, higher in rank than any Hurin lord who would settle there. With notable exceptions, all other Laconian lords would also retain their rank. Diaphon set his second son, Tyagon, as king of Laconia, under his own authority, of course. His firstborn, Teraphon the Wise, would take over rule of the Hurin Empire after his demise. Thus, Laconia, the Light Kingdom, though technically under Hurin overlordship, had an honor no other kingdom under Hurin rule had been given, namely, the rule of one of Diaphon's own sons. It also retained the name of kingdom. While Laconia was not technically independent, Hurin and Laconia became known as the Twin Kingdoms. Because Philon was allowed to keep his palace in Grenvir, a new capital city was built from which Tyagon would rule, in which many of the settlers from Hurin would live. This new capital was the great city of Fanata, which was built in the days following the Great Peace. Few Laconians lived there, but the lords would gather there, both Hurin and Laconian, to honor the king. 14 season changes after the Great Peace, Philon III passed away and left his son, Philon IV, as first lord of the kingdom. Tyagon and the young Philon got along well and met often in one capital or another to discuss Laconian affairs. Truly this was a time of peace, and most of the war-weary kingdom had rejoiced about the great peace and the end of bloodshed. If it had been difficult for Philon III to abdicate his throne to Tyagon, who was much younger, he bore it well. Philon IV, however, had no difficulty with the arrangement. He lived in all the wealth and privilege his house had always enjoyed, in the very same palace, and did not have the final responsibility of being king. Tyagon valued his counsel, but he was responsible for the final decision in all matters. On the same day that Hellel's company crossed the Dalena River, Philon IV received an unexpected visit in his palace. It was well known that the Hurin Empire, as it continued to expand west, had come into contact with another mighty empire called Dachman. The two were in some sort of peace negotiations, but few in Laconia knew any of the details. On this day, to Philon's great surprise, it was announced that a Dahmanian ambassador had come to pay him a visit. As the ambassador entered his great hall, Philon saw that he was a very old man, pale and wrinkled, with a bald head. He wore clothes of black with silver trim and walked with a black cane with a silver handle. He was accompanied by a tall man dressed all in black. This companion had hair and eyes that were as black as his clothes. He was thin and looked all the thinner for being so tall. His skin was pale, looking all the paler for his hair and clothes, and he had a long, hooked nose. As these two entered, the king felt a chill in his chamber. It was late summer, and the sun was shining in through the massive windows, but he felt cold. Also, for a reason that he could not explain, he felt afraid. He had not been afraid like this since the days before the Great Peace, when he thought his father's house might fall to Hurin after a bloody struggle. "Greetings, my lord Philon," the ambassador said, bowing low. "Greetings, honored guest," Philon replied. "I had not heard about your visit from His Royal Majesty, King Tyagan. Does he know of it?" He said this in a tone of disapproval that suggested he thought Tyagan did not know. Afraid though he felt, Philon thought that if the king had known about this visit, he would have told him. He felt that both king and kingdom had been disrespected, and he had much pride in the new Laconia. "He did not know," the ambassador replied. "The business was urgent, and I wish to see you before I go to address him. As you must know, we are in peace negotiations with Teraphon the Wise, the mighty emperor of Hurin." "I have heard," Philon replied. "What is it that you wish to speak to me about?" "Your brother." Philon was taken aback. What could this mean? His only brother, had died 18 season changes ago. My brother?" he stammered. "You once had a brother, did you not?" "Yes." "He was married to a great lady, was he not?" During this conversation, the ambassador's companion had his eyes fixed on Philon. This was very disrespectful, but Philon felt too afraid to say anything about it. "He married Lady Lorraine, daughter of one of the oldest and greatest Laconian houses, and considered by most to be the greatest beauty in the kingdom." "They both died in a tragic accident, did they not?" "Yes." Philon did not know why he gave this extra information so freely. He simply answered without thinking. "Did they have a child?" "Yes." Philon could not believe he disclosed this fact so freely to this strange ambassador that he had never seen before. Only 3 living people knew that information. He did not know why, but his brother and his wife had kept giving birth to a child very secret. Her protector, Lord Hellel, had always insisted on the child's existence being kept secret. Why would he tell this strange man about her? Why could he not help answering this man's questions? He began to tremble. "Where is this child now?" He could not control himself. He said, "My brother had become friends with the Hurin Lord Hellel. The child is in Lord Hellel's care." "And where does the child dwell?" Only the Lord Hellel knows that. And where is the Lord Hellel now? He recently told me he was going on a journey. I don't know where or for how long. He said it was very private. I respect the Lord Hellel's privacy. He is a very important man in our kingdom. Who else knows of this child? Only myself, Hellel, and a guardian he set over her. Nera is her name, I think. The child is female? Yes. And her name? Philon felt this was wrong, but he could not control himself as the tall man's gaze was fixed upon him. Hope, he said after some time. The ambassador had no eyebrows, but he raised the place above his eyes where they would normally be. Hope? He asked. Yes. In the common tongue? Yes. The ambassador turned and looked at his tall companion, who nodded quickly and left the hall. The king felt warmth and relief at his departure. After a respectful farewell, the ambassador then left as well. Philon felt scared and confused. Something was terribly wrong. What had he done? He desperately wanted to get word to Hellel, but he had no idea where he was. Hellel had specifically asked that no one come looking for him while on his journey. What could this possibly be about? Why had his niece's existence always been kept a secret? What was going on? Philon felt like he had done something dreadful. His senses had been paralyzed with terror, and he had not been his own master. He feared that there would be dreadful consequences for his having answered this ambassador's questions. Chapter 10. Excuse me. Approaching the hills. The journey of Hellel's company continued in much the same manner as it had for weeks. Hellel's plan for avoiding attention had been successful, and everything was going according to plan. When they were about 2 weeks' journey from the Kuragan hills, Hellel summoned Alva to fall back and ride beside him. Bonson had been riding beside him, but he asked him to ride forward because he wanted to speak to Alva privately. Bonson was bothered at this. What could Hellel possibly have to say to Alva that he could not hear? However, this gave him a reason to make conversation with Hope. So he rode forward and asked her what she thought of the terrain. They were passing through a much more rugged area in comparison to the lush plains and flower beds they had previously ridden through. But Hope thought this land had its own character, and she loved it. She got lost in loving descriptions of the reddish dirt that they were riding over now, peppered with stubby trees, tufts of long grass, and reddish rocks. Bonson felt very successful in having engaged her attention. But how could he make her his? This was the question that occupied his thoughts. Alva was prepared for Hellel to ask probing questions about his past. What was more, he was prepared to answer them. He had felt this was coming ever since he had told his story about Bali. Hellel had been a respectful and trustworthy leader, so if he felt he needed more information about Alva's past, he felt no reason to keep it hidden from him. However, this was not what Hellel wished to talk about. "You have journeyed through the Kuragan hills before, Alva?" he asked. "Several times. Always on the same route?" "No, my lord, on several different routes." "Hellel is fine, my friend," Hellel replied graciously. "Neither Jagrok nor myself have been through them, and neither have most of the other men. I will need to rely on your knowledge a great deal as we travel through." I am at your disposal. Hellel? Thank you. Alva? Hellel said this with a smile. He did not make jokes often, but when they did, they were just the kind of wit Alva appreciated. Now, Hellel continued, what are our options for a route, and what do you recommend? Well, Alva replied, if you insist on traveling by horseback, the only possible route is to keep following the river. This would give us fine riding in a way that has existed for many hundreds of season changes and is convenient for a speedy journey. But, Hellel asked perceptively, but most bandit gangs in the hills have their main camps close to the river where there is plenty of water. Some of these gangs are large, and there is no way we could keep our journey secret. There are only 11 fighting men among us. We would have to fight every day until we were all killed. We would almost certainly be dead before we got a third of the way through the hills, and that is a very generous estimate. If you wanted to go that way, you would have needed to bring a small army, and I know that did not suit your need because armies aren't quiet. So going by horseback is out, Hellel said with a smile. He had expected this and had planned accordingly. What are our options on foot, and what do you recommend? To be perfectly frank, the chances of any of us getting through alive are not great any way you look at it. I'm sure you have very good reasons for what we're doing, but it is a very dangerous job. I would have not taken it for much less than the 10,000 gold pieces you're paying us. Thank you for being frank. Now please tell me how we attain the highest low chance of success. We need to take one of the footpaths. I recommend one south of the river. It will take us through a higher part of the hills, but there are a few pools for water along the way. Given that we are starting in early fall, it will take us through some higher passes. It will get very cold at night, but we should be able to survive it with fires. And I know ways to hide the glow of fires. As does Jagrok, said Hellel. Good, Alva replied. Understand this. We will have 1 or 2 skirmishes before we're done. But nothing our lot can't handle, I think. When we go through the other side, we'll have to pass through territory controlled by a man named Glandair. He is the son of a Lassanian lord who refused to cross over. Instead, he set up a petty kingdom on the east side of the hills. The father is passed on, and Glandair now rules in his stead. With luck, we may be able to pass through unnoticed. If not, we cannot get through by fighting. His men are too numerous and too well trained. You might be able to buy us through with your gold. It will probably cost as much as all of our fees put together, but he might go for it. I have sufficient funds and will gladly pay him whatever he requires, said Hellel. Once we're on the other side of Glandair's lands, Alva continued, we should be home free so far as the pass is concerned. Any further danger would be something you will know more about than me. The bandits are not overly fond of those lands, and Glandair will not allow bandits in his kingdom. Other bandits, said Hellel. As you will, Alva smiled. Just don't say that if we ever have to negotiate with him. You have been in fights in these hills? Hellel asked. Yes, Alva replied. Quite a few. When we run into trouble, I will count on you to give us speedy orders on what to do. Understand that I retain full authority, and Nira is still my second, but your experience will be needed. If I need you to give instruction, I will simply say your name, Alva, and you will tell us what to do in the situation. I will command the men to do whatever you say then. Do not mention this before such a situation occurs. They must know I am in full authority on this journey. I understand and obey, said Alva. To follow your plan, we will need to cross the river. We will, and the sooner the better, I think. The farthest east I have ever been is Calvern, said Hellel, the last small city before one reaches the hills. I know it well, said Alva. 4 days' journey from the hills, but longer on foot. Yes, when we pass it, Philor, Pincer, and you will go into town leading all the horses. You will sell them and buy a small boat and 2 pack donkeys. We will walk well beyond the city and cross the river. We will have to bind the donkeys well to bring them over in the boat, but it can be done. I've done it before. 3 men selling 13 high-quality riding horses and 2 pack horses, then leaving with 2 donkeys and a boat, are bound to attract some local attention, said Alva. I realize that, said Hillel, but it can't be helped. At least, that is the major last stop before entering the hills. There shouldn't be enough time for anyone significant to find out. By the time anyone figures out where we are going, we will be safely in danger. Sounds like a plan, Alva said. He was curious what people of significance would want to know where they were going, but he let this go for now. Anything else you need to discuss with me? He asked. No. As you're putting some more trust in me than the others, may I ask you a few questions? You may. I will decline to answer if I wish, said Hillel. Fair enough. First, I know Nera was not in the tavern that day by accident. Why was it her and not you? I had hoped to hire 10 men, but as the journey drew near, I only had time to discover 9 of the 10 I needed. In my interview with Pincer, I had asked whether he thought he was too old for a job like this. He told me he did not like to brag, but he thought he would be a match for any younger man that I might hire. That is, he said, unless you hire a young fella named Alva. This intrigued me. I had heard the name Alva before, but had never heard a statement of praise like this. I asked my friend Balsasaner if he had ever heard of you. He said you were a fine young man, and would be delivering a message to him soon. This was a stroke of luck. Only I had to secure Tombus for the journey and could not be in Braccia when you arrived. I asked Nera to conduct an interview for me and see whether you were worth hiring. You impressed Nera, and thus she set up a meeting for the time of my return. Well, I am glad Lady Nera saw something positive in me at least once, said Alva. Hillel smiled. Tell me about Lady Nera, Alva continued. The Lady Nera's personal life is her own affair. I never doubted that. And it is very clear that in her personal life, nothing in it will involve myself. But I am curious who she is and where she came from. I've never met a woman like her before. Hillel hesitated. I will tell you something of her. I don't think she would mind. You must understand that not all lords sit around and count their wealth. I understand that. Many lords commit themselves to certain pursuits. Young Bonson has committed himself to military science. Even in a time of relative peace, it is important that some men have such a commitment. Certainly, said Alva. And your pursuit? Alva knew that somehow Nera was tied into this. I am a historian. I have used my fortune to travel far and wide trying to understand the world by understanding its past. Some of my travels led me to lands beyond the Huron Empire, vast though it is. Beyond Huron there are other empires. I gather that you have no love for Huron, but it is by no means the worst empire in the world. In many of the lands beyond, they practice slavery and often sell people from conquered kingdoms. Alva began to see where this was going. Does a great man like Lord Hillel engage in slave trade? It sickens me, but I had no power to interfere in such lands, and my fortune was not such that I could buy every slave only to free them. On 2 occasions, however, I bought a slave that greatly intrigued me. On both occasions, I gave them their freedom and offered them paid service if they wished it. Nera and Jagrock, Alva suggested. You are very intelligent, Alva. Perhaps you should have been a scholar. Who says I'm not? Hillel smiled. So in answer to your question, Nera is a noble woman from a conquered kingdom. I bought her in a slave market, gave her freedom, and offered her a place in my service. She accepted. And Shagrok? He was a military prisoner of war. That is enough information about them for now. Do you have any more questions for me? One, Alva replied. Have you ever seen a black knight? Like in a storybook? Yes, like in a storybook. But not in a storybook, in real life. No. Have you? Yes. Between meeting Nera and meeting you, I took a ride through the Camden Pass and camped out in the Eye. Do you know the Eye? Yes. While I was there, I saw a caravan of some sort coming into the pass. It escorted a white carriage, and it was led by 2 black knights. Hillel, I'm like Pensor. I do not like to brag, but I am not afraid of anything. My father taught me not to fear. I'm not afraid of dying, and I'm not afraid of being tortured. Pain can be controlled, and I can control it. I believe you. So? So, when I saw those black knights, I was afraid. I felt afraid and cold in the summertime with the sun shining. I don't believe in magic, and I can't explain it, but I know I'm not mad. That is what I saw, and that is what happened. Why bring this up now? Because somehow I think they were tied up with that little girl we're escorting. Like I said, I don't believe in magic, but if anything in this world is magic, she is. She makes me feel the exact opposite of the way they did, and I know she makes us all feel like that, warm and happy. Hope is a very special girl, Alva, Hillel responded, but like I said, I've never seen a black knight. Alva knew this statement was true, but he also knew Hillel knew more than he was saying. He could tell, however, that Hillel was done giving answers for the time being, at least, and he did not want to push. Alright, my friends, that's not quite the end of a chapter, but I am going to stop there because it's a good transition, and we'll pick up right there tomorrow, probably around the same time. Maybe a little after 3, maybe like 3:15 because of an appointment I have. But, yeah, I hope you're all enjoying the story, and I hope you can wait until then. Peace out.